A stalemate in chess is essentially a situation that results in a draw. In order for a stalemate to occur, you need two things to happen. First of all, when a player's turn begins, their king cannot be in check. Secondly, any move that they make in that turn will result in a check. So if we take points number 1 and points number 2, and we add those two together, we end up with a draw where nobody wins. And this is one of the weirder rules in chess, where you can be way ahead, and if you don't pay attention and your opponent doesn't resign, they can force a stalemate. Let's take a look at an example of how this would work. We have black to move right here. Now to start off, we look at black's king. Well, black's king has 4 different moves. Now they have a knight there, and the knight has several different moves it can make as well. Now let's take a look at white's attacking pieces. First, white's knight. White's knight blocks red squares right there. The only relevant one is the one by the king. Next, we're going to take a look at the relevant squares for the queen. And the queen's relevant squares are right there. Then we'll take a look at the bishop, and we'll take a look at the relevant squares the bishop attacks right there in yellow. And finally, we'll take a look at the white's rook, and the relevant squares the rook is attacking right there. As we look at this board right here, we look at number 1, and point number 1 says if a player's king is not in check at the beginning of the turn, which we satisfy because the player's king is not currently in check. And then we look at point number 2, and essentially point number 2 is any move they make will result in a check. Well, okay, the king cannot move, all the king spots are covered. And then we look at the knight, and if the knight moves, that would expose the king to a check by the queen, as the queen would check the king with the blue line right there. So in this case, we satisfy points number 1, satisfy point number 2, and we end up with a draw. And a stalemate is essentially where point number 1 happens, where a player's king is not in check, and point number 2, where any move the player makes will result in a check. Let's go ahead and throw a little wrinkle to the example. We're going to add a pawn for black. Now we have the same question. Do we have a stalemate here? Well, if you look at the board, we notice that point number 1 is satisfied, where a player's king is not in check. So black's king is not in check here. And then we have to look at point number 2. Now the key point to point number 2 is, can black make any moves that will not result in a check? Well, in this case, if we look at black's pawn right there, we'll notice that black can move the pawn forward. And if black moves the pawn forward, that move will not result in a check. So we failed to satisfy point number 2, but we satisfy point number 1, so we do not have a stalemate in this case. So that's the subtle difference between the two. And in this case, black can move the pawn, and that's why there is not a stalemate here. And this concludes our tutorial for how a stalemate works. Thank you for watching.